You have to make it as real as possible with the energy and intensity. And one way you can make things energetic is by actually going hard.
This is the Action Filmmaking Decoded Podcast. A podcast dedicated to raw action analysis.
Ooh, my gosh. For fans of action cinema out there, how badass would that be?
Each week, we bring you a new action filmmaker to break down your favorite scenes.
360 off person, round kick the guy from a 360 spin.
Now, introducing your hosts, Darren Tunn and Mike Messina.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Action Filmmaking Decoded Podcast. I'm your host, Darren Tunn. I'm here with my co-host, Mike Messina. Today, we have a very special guest, Vlad Rimburg. He is a fight coordinator and action director. He's been known for his works in Lucifer, Sultan, Unlucky Stars, and his YouTube channel shorts on Vlad Rimburg. What do we think about this episode, Mike?
I mean, he's the big bad boy from Belarus. What else is there to say, you know? One thing that I loved about Vlad is he's constantly pushing this message about just putting in the work, whether it's doing your solo fight scenes on your own on your indie YouTube channel, or if it's just going back and studying and watching the old school Hong Kong or Korean action movies and knowing the work of the masters inside and out.
Yeah, definitely. And he really touches on this point, like you got to go 100%. You know, you can't just come onto set and not give it your full effort. And I think that's one of my main takeaways from him.
Yeah, definitely. And he's another guy saying, oh, you should definitely go back and recreate some of the old masters fight scenes shot for shot and use that to learn and then apply it yourself too. And you have to go out and make your own things in order to find your own style and to really just apply that theory.
So yeah, without further ado, here is Vlad Rimburg. All right, so Vlad, how is everything going with you?
Everything's going great, as good as it can be in this time in our lives.
I listened on another podcast that you did not get your 100K subscriber plaque yet, and I was wondering if that came in for you yet.
That did, yes.
Oh, okay.
Sometime last year in 2020, even though it's still 2020, the plaque did manage to make its way to my house.
Awesome,
unfortunately, I've yet to put it up on the wall, so hopefully during another podcast with you guys or someone else, they'll be like, hey, did you put that plaque up on the wall yet?
It's the great conversation that scholars talk about. Is the plaque here yet? Did it get on the wall?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. It's a big moment for sure.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I was never expecting to get to 100K subscribers, and then sure enough, when I was around 70, I'm like, okay, keep going. I don't know what's happening. But whatever's happening, just keep happening. I think I was stuck at like 96 for a few months. And I'm like, well, it is what it is. I don't, what can I do?
Yeah.
And sure enough, the 100 hit, I got that notification saying that I can get myself a plaque. And I was pretty excited. Yeah.
Yeah. And I see that you're also almost there for Facebook as well.
Correct. Yes. I think it's like at 97,500 subscribers, but over 500,000 followers.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I'm actually wondering, so as the ages progress, as media changes very rapidly, it seems, in recent years, have you had to really consciously change your approach to self-branding or marketing yourself and putting your media out there, stuff like that?
Not really. I just put stuff out there, and if anyone wants to watch it, they can watch it. But on Facebook, what I did start doing was not monetizing, but paying for advertisements. So I would target specific locations, and I would do all the research in regards to the top Facebook profiles in that specific region. I did a little bit of research, a little bit of homework, and I started targeting audiences. I've done a decent amount of work in India and will continue to do so. And that's also because my wife is Indian. So a lot of my advertisements get sent out there.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
Just
Facebook lets you target very, very specifically. I know that.
Oh, yeah. So the approach has been the same. It's just, honestly, I feel like I'm always the last in line to figure things out and jump on the board. Like Instagram, realistically, I never had an Instagram profile. It was Travis Wong that helped set that up. And I think after maybe like 6-7 months, I jumped on board and I started managing the Instagram. But it's a lot of work. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. When I get really busy with work and you see those pages quiet, it's because I'm extremely busy with work.
Yeah. So you like the platform overall, though?
Oh, yeah,
It's been good.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, it's been pretty good to me. I've been reached out for work because of the content I put out and because of the ads that I put out for my work. So it's been nice. And the work varies. Like it can be Hollywood movies. I was also approached by the head national coach of the Spanish karate team.
Wow. Wow.
They wanted to invite me out to help them with some choreography ideas in the forums section. And
That's so
I
cool.
told them, hey, I did that project with a gentleman by the name of Brendan Hoare. And it's unfortunately going to cost you guys some money. And unfortunately, it did cost them some money. So they said, we can't bring you guys out. But the opportunities are there. The connections are being made through the social media platforms. And it's great. I don't use it as a means of any kind of like financial support. It's just more so for the world to know, hey,
like a
there's
showcase.
someone really passionate about martial arts cinema and martial arts movie making. And hopefully one day you'll find this guy named Vlad Rimburg on some form of social media or on, or at home on TV or in a movie theater.
It seems like if you already have a passion for whatever it is that you're doing, then social media is just a multiplier for everything once you have that core of your work already set.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's the best way to go ahead and let the world know that you exist. I'm still kind of surprised in the Los Angeles area. If you go to like Venice Beach or Hollywood Boulevard pre-COVID, there are guys standing outside selling CDs. And to me, I'm like, I thought I was in the back of the line. These guys are like way behind. They're nowhere near the line. They're still trying to find the line.
Yeah, they need to sell CD players with their CDs.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yes, you have to adapt. You have to adapt. Even if you come to the game a little bit late, there's always an opportunity to be heard, even to make money. If you really want to get into that monetization game.
And you mentioned potentially working with some forums before. It's pretty interesting, I guess. Maybe action filmmaking is some combination of sparring and live training plus the choreographed aspect of forums. Were you ever a forums-centric person when you were doing martial arts?
Oh, yes. I love forums. I love forums more than sparring because it's all on you to memorize movements and execute those movements. There's a tone and a feel, just like in a fight scene. You have tone and feelings and emotions in the form. Because I did Korean karate, Tangsudo, I'll use some Korean terms, but there's like the kiap, the internal yell that you have. So those are beats and moments in the form. If you watch traditional Japanese karate forms, there are movements that are combined, with the hips and the shoulders, where the movements are so fast, you bang out 2 to 3 moves within a second. And then you slow down again. So I feel if you've done forms are a form of dance. So it'll absolutely help you transition into screen fighting. And someone just mentioned sparring. Sparring helps you with those natural instincts and reactions. So that way you get used to hands and feet flying at your face. Because what can happen is, as a screen fighter, you get excited, you're about to go ahead and perform. And then you see hands flying at you and you get scared and nervous. You completely forget what it is that you were supposed to do. You forget the choreography, you forget the beats. And your body might lock up and do some funky things because you haven't been put in that position where there's someone in front of you trying to punch and kick you in the face, in the chest, in the leg, anywhere. So there's no natural instinct. And that also helps with screen fighting. But these are all things that I feel one can build and progress. And if they train really, really hard and if they practice a lot, they don't need those elements. They can be a perfect screen fighter without them if they go ahead and train and practice regularly.
Yeah. And one thing I'm definitely working on is getting comfortable. So I'm a Taekwondo guy by trade, and in branching out, just getting comfortable with being punched in the face and being in that, like you've spent your whole career in the kicking range. And then you get a little closer and all of a sudden you're allowed to punch and be punched up top on the high line. And it's a totally different ballgame. You have to relearn pretty much everything, like you're saying, and get comfortable with that all over again.
Oh, absolutely, yes. And Taekwondo, being a former Taekwondo practitioner myself, I know that we love to have our hands down.
Oh, yeah.
Something you don't really get away with when you screen fight because you have to look like a solid performer.
Right, that's true. Although you also have to... I know in a lot of choreography, they're not trying to cover their faces with their hands, but they are trying to keep them up. So they wind up kind of floating around by your chest or kind of up high over there.
Yes. As long as they are not pressed up against your chest, I hope the audience members listening are taking notes. Never press your hands up against your chest when you are doing any kind of a fight scene. It makes you look weak because your hands are now resting on your body, right?
Okay,
They're not in front of
That's
you.
right.
And if your hands are resting, they're not tensed up. And if you're in the complete mode of relaxation, you're either the main villain, like the super hardcore badass bad guy that's always relaxed, or you're the hero who's relaxed and comfortable. But if you want to get into stunts, if you want to get into screen fighting, no one's going to hire a hero, and no one's going to give you an opportunity to be a bad guy right away. You have to know how to goon, right? And if you want to be a good goon, keep your hands away from your chest. Have them in front of your chest. Don't have them pressed up against your chest. As I've been doing this, as I continue to design action sequences and fights, I start nitpicking at certain things, like what you should and shouldn't do as a screen fighter to make you look better. And that's always the goal. Whenever you put someone in front of the camera, if you're behind the camera, your goal is to make these people look the best they've ever looked. But it's all a collaborative effort. The guys in front of the camera have to know their job as well. They have to have done their homework. But yes, no hands resting on the chest.
Gotcha.
Number one rule.
Tips, yeah.
Number one rule, yes.
Yeah.
How to Goon. I like that. That's the name of the first series of memoirs we're going to write. How to Goon.
Hell yeah.
And so you mentioned like making people look good on camera. How did you go about learning exactly how to do that? And what goes into that exactly, that process?
It's practice. It's practice. People don't seem to realize that you can't become good at anything unless you try and you practice. You can't learn to walk unless you actually give it a try. You know, like with kids, I have a 2-year-old, so I've seen the progression of my daughter laying on her back to trying to crawl, to crawling, to trying to stand, to standing, and so on and so on. So with that said, you have to practice and practice, and you have to really analyze yourself. There are people out there that put out content and they're excited and they're like, yes, this is great. But in reality, it's not that good. And it could cause them to lose their jobs. So with that said, one of the first fights I ever shot, we put the camera on the tripod because it was just my buddy and I, my buddy Ryan Hurd. We got dressed up in our martial arts uniforms. We put the camera at a 45-degree angle far away on one side, then another side, then another side, and then another side. We covered 4 angles. We did the exact same choreography with one camera. Super far away and super wide because we didn't know any better. I mean, yes, I watched Hong Kong movies and I thought I knew how to do things, but until you actually begin the process of application, you don't know what the hell you're doing. It's all theory, right? Like you might watch a martial arts movie and say, yes, we're going to go outside and shoot a martial arts movie. But if you've never done that, you won't know what you're doing. You don't know camera angles. You don't know anything. So from me performing in front of camera for the first time and realize how much we sucked, I was determined to make sure that we got better. And it just practice. Now, the reason I started working behind the camera more than in front of the camera is because I had one too many shoulder dislocations. And that stuff started to freak me out. And at the time, I just started to meet more people that were a little bit more advanced than I was, whether it was hitting the ground or performing in general. Like when I met Dennis Rule in 2004, the next day we were shooting a short film. So I'd say I probably had like 2-3 years of practice, not only behind camera, but mostly in front of camera. So I had an idea of what kind of performances I wanted and how to set things up. And I just took that with me when I got behind the camera more. The transition honestly happened because of my shoulder being dislocated so many times. And I thought it would just be safe for me to be behind the camera and still be involved in the action making process. I'm not taking anything away from anyone. I'm just letting them shine.
Yeah, exactly. And I know like even during Unlucky Stars, you were in front of the camera as well. And you were also probably coordinating some stuff behind the camera. What is that like being on screen and then also coordinating the stuff behind camera and directing?
Oh, it's wonderful because after X amount of takes, you're going to go and you're going to review the footage and then you're going to say, okay, let's do it again. You know, so earlier I said you have to be very critical of yourself. You have to know where you stand as a performer. And one of the things as an action director that you do when you're performing in front of the camera is you have to review your performance. So essentially that's what we were doing. Now, Dennis was camera operating, and then Dennis has been camera operating for quite some time. So I trusted all the camera angles. It was just a matter of, is the performance there? Is the intensity there? there or the beats there. And I actually did this as well a little bit later on when I had an opportunity to go to India. I was the action director on a movie called Brothers, which was the Bollywood remake of Warrior. And I ended up being in front of the camera as the referee while action directing. And our stunt coordinator, Justin Yu, was watching monitors. And I told him, if you think it's a decent take, I will take a look at the footage. So if it was a decent take, Justin would yell, Vlad. So then I had to get out of the octagon, run over to Video Village, review the footage, make any notes necessary, go back in, talk to my actors, let them know what's going on. And then we start up again. But now the thing is, I'm not performing in front of the camera. Technically, I am because I'm a referee. So as I'm watching the actors perform, I've already set up all the camera angles, so I know what I'm looking for. But I have to make sure that I'm in motion and moving around and acting like a referee while watching these two guys perform and taking notes. That's a lot more difficult than what I did in Unlucky Stars, which is like, okay, I'm in front of the camera. This is the action sequence. Let's bang it out. Let's take a look. And that fight scene, those beginning beats, like that front kick into some handwork into the side kick, at the time I was working at Apple, and I would just be choreographing whenever I wasn't talking to any customers.
Wow.
So the choreography process, depending on the project, can start at any time, and that can be anywhere. It can be in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden I have this unique dream, and I wake up and I'm like, okay, I got to write down these choreography ideas. But there's no set rules of how to, I'd say, go about things. Everyone has their own unique process. My process has worked for me. And at the end of the day, it's like if everyone's put in the work, then the only thing we have to be critical is the intensity and technique behind the movement. We don't have to worry about, can this person throw this kind of a kick? Can this person react like this? Can this person throw this kind of a punch? I felt like we were already at that level where it's just like, we just need to make sure it looks good. Right. So for me, it wasn't a stressful or chaotic process. And also, I mean, I was surrounded by Dennis. I was surrounded by Sam Hargrave. When we got into the bits with Sam wrecking, I leave all that up to Sam because it's like, Sam, that's your body. You let us know what you're comfortable doing and how you want to wreck your body. So when Sam would say, hey, I want to do this over here, I want to do this 3/4, then I would go ahead and fill in the missing beats. Like, okay, we can have a choreography beat right here where this reaction happens. Okay, and then I'm going to throw this kind of kick where this reaction happens. And sometimes I'll choreograph in the same way as well. Like, you know, Sam telling me what kind of gags he wants to do and I fill it in. I'll have like certain ideas, like I'll have moments that I know I want, and then I'll just go ahead and fill them in. Or I'll choreograph for one side, and then I go ahead and fill in the other side. It all depends. I mean, creativity comes about differently for everyone, and sometimes it can even change on the person that's creating. So I'm always open to new and unique ways of trying to figure things out. But for anyone that's ever stuck with choreography, just move on. Kind of like with writing. The main things you want to focus on, which is the beginning, the middle, and the end. If you don't know what's happening in the beginning, go to the end. You know, how do you want this action sequence to end? And then start working around backwards.
Okay. Yeah. It definitely seems like you had a lot of trust, and it was like a mixture of that trust and also you kind of going back and checking the footage, and especially when working with other people and being on camera.
Absolutely, yes. And the reason we had the trust is because everyone put in the time and work. They did all that practicing that they had to do to be at the level that we wanted everyone to be at in order for Unlucky Stars to be what it became, you know, like the best indie action film ever.
Definitely.
Because not only did it have people like Dennis, you know, and Ken Kidigwa, but it brought in just about anyone and everyone from the indie world at the time, like the Marshall Club. We had Andy Lee and Brian Lee. We had Sam Hargrave from Real Kick, and we had Alex Wynn from Real Kick. We just had a very nice and diverse group of people. And I think it worked because everyone came from the indie world and we were also passionate. And honestly, we had all put in the time into our craft. So there was never any doubt about skill levels. And it was just more about like, hey, let's just make sure it looks good. 5 takes, 10 takes, 20 takes. It's got to look good.
That's something I wanted to ask about, actually, because I know we keep returning to not being overconfident and being able to really self-criticize and see where you need to improve. Was there ever an issue either in yourself or in other people where you feel like there was not enough confidence, like you were maybe having imposter syndrome, or you needed to believe in your own work a little bit more?
Wow. Hell yeah. Multiple answers to that question. Number one, I felt extremely well, when we did Unlucky Stars, Number one, I felt extremely uncomfortable acting. I'm not a fan of doing acting scenes where I play myself or I play regular people. I love over-the-top stuff. Like, if you guys can find it, there's a 1-minute short film of me running around as an angel in a diaper.
Oh, we definitely found that.
That sort of stuff I love. I love the wacky, crazy, kooky characters. And going back to Unlucky, I was very nervous and hesitant about performing, but Dennis did a great job of directing me and directing everyone. I think all the acting beats feel natural for the most part. They don't feel forced. So honestly, number one, when it comes to acting, that's when I cringe. If it's me or someone else. So I have to make sure that I plan it out the best way that I can. So that way it doesn't look or sound stupid, which kind of takes me to the next point. Acting is one thing, but to make sure you have dialogue that helps progress the story. So it's not corny or anything like that, or it's not quote unquote dumb or repetitive. Writing dialogue is very difficult. Yes. So I'd say the reason I'd also be hesitant to put anyone in a dialogue scene or role is because I usually don't write those. If you take a look at my work, I rely heavily on physical acting and just narratives done through performances. Or I use music to help me progress with the beat of the story. But when it comes to dialogue, nowadays it's like very, very specific moments of dialogue. From a physical performer standpoint, I've always, wanted to make sure that I look good when I'm performing. The last performance bit where I got to show off some kicking was for Brian Sloyer's short film called Heart System, where I play the mad scientist that creates this droid played by Akihiro. And he and I have a fight scene where I throw kicks. And it had been some time since I threw kicks in the fight scene. But again, Brian Sloyer allowed me to go ahead and review the footage to make sure that I wasn't doing things that I wasn't comfortable with. If I don't like the way I look, I'll speak up, especially on an indie set. Can't do that so much on a professional movie or TV show set. So I limit my performances in front of screen on something like that.
Yeah, Darren and I, we're also filmmaking as well as film podcasting, and dialogue definitely something that is tricky. And after you stare at that page for so long, you just wonder after, is this good? Is this bad? I can't really tell anymore. Is that ever like a situation that comes up when it comes to fighting on screen? Are you ever so immersed in it that you almost can't tell if it's what you wanted or not?
Well, I tell people to just trust me. When I shoot with people, I let them know you just have to believe in the work that I'm doing. Just like if you're going to go work on any movie, whether it's Michael Bay, Quentin Tarantino, Martin Scorsese, you have to trust the director. You have to trust the person with the vision. So I ask that people trust me, because in the past what would happen is as I come out and I start choreographing, I get questions. Well, wouldn't this happen? Wouldn't that happen? And it's like, I'm just like, you know what? Maybe, I don't know. Be quiet. Listen to me. Do what I ask you, because I'm going to make you look good better than you can make yourself look good. That's just the honest truth. Now, there have been moments where I'll choreograph something and then like an hour later we have to re-choreograph it, because as I process the information throughout the day, I think to myself, okay, what we did doesn't work. We have to redo it. So that's happened in the past before. But also, the beautiful thing about indie filmmaking is you can go ahead and film, piece everything together the same night, and then before you go shoot the next day, you review all your footage and you get to see if you need to reshoot anything, if something works, if it doesn't work. That's the beautiful thing about indie filmmaking, which you don't really have in Hollywood or anywhere else. So I use that to my advantage a lot, if I need to. Sometimes we do a project where it's a 3-day shoot over the course of a month and a half. And after 2 days of filming, I'm sitting there with the footage on my computer for a month, and I'm looking, and I might say, you know what, I don't like this bit. Let's change that, or let's add this moment over here to give it some more life. It's like if I'm trying to tell a certain story in a fight scene and I feel like I'm missing a beat, then I'll definitely go back and try to get it.
And so as an indie guy, where you really can make things generally for yourself, for your own, group of peers who are making the film, how have you transitioned into the more, I guess, like Hollywood, if you want to say, professional space where you do have to sort of hold yourself accountable to someone else's vision as opposed to just whatever it is that you have in your head?
What you just said you have to hold yourself accountable to someone else's vision. Remember, kids, when you work for other people that are paying you, you are going to do what they ask you to do. The stunt community openly talks about, oh, my fight scene got ruined, it got edited, they shot it to shit. And the prime example of that is Iron Fist Season 1. The action sequences got butchered by production. They did. You know why? Because the same team went on to do Warrior, and that show looks amazing, right? Choreography is great. Brett Chan, Johnny Yang, Malai, who worked on the first Iron Fist and then on the second Iron Fist, and they figured things out a little bit better. When I say they, I'm talking about production. So number one, the transition, you have to know that your artwork is going to be limited once you go and you start making money. But it's up to you to be the amazing artist and pitch yourself to where people want to follow as much of your work and work style as possible. So working in TV, you don't have the luxury of having a week to prep a fight scene or anything like that. It's like, hey, you have a day to go ahead and prep the fight scene, maybe a day to rehearse with the actors, and then a day of filming. I worked on a show where I had to create a fight scene 40 minutes before we did that. And then I had 10 minutes to rehearse with our actors. But because I came from the indie world, choreographing on the spot, that helped out a lot. The transition is a funky transition because you're going to be like, why are they doing it like this? Why are they doing it like this? Well, it's because they have money and that's the way they do things. And if you want to make your things on a grander scale, on an indie level, you need to make the money. And I would recommend you learn how people do things in the professional world. Because if you want to go ahead and make any kind of a dent or change, or if you want to have your workflow pattern followed in the professional industry world, you have to know how that industry operates and works from all standpoints. And when you're talking about millions and millions of dollars, you're no longer working with your buddies on an indie set, where you're just paying everyone with lunch. These are people with big houses, with children and wives. Like, these are their jobs. This is what they do professionally.
Right.
So you need to make that transition. You need to make that change and understand that you are now working in a completely different world. It's still the same game. JJ Perry reached out to me after I put out a couple of shorts, and he's all like, hey, little bro, do you want to make some real money? And I was like, absolutely. And then I got a chance to work with him like 2 years later. These things take time. Everything takes time. Even if you're gifted, you can be the most gifted person in the world, but producers don't care unless you can show people that your way will be cost effective and you can still give them the product that you're pitching to them. Then they'll be happy. Then they might go ahead and listen. But for the most part, it's a whole different world because these people are playing with big digits. And you get paid handsomely as well in the industry. But there's a lot of give and take. There's a lot of learning to be done. I know a lot of people just give up. They have one or two jobs in the professional world, and they're like, this is not for me. And it's like, I understand, but you have to deal with it. You have to bend over sometimes. You have to put in the time. Again, in the other world, so people know your name. Because on an indie level, people know me. People know me around the world. But when I transitioned to the professional industry, I had to get my name out because coordinators aren't really sitting there and watching short films online. Not unless it's making a big dent in the industry. Not unless you're going to show them something they haven't seen before. And that's what happened with me when I shot this one fight with two ladies, Mickey Facinello and Amy Johnston. Shot this kind of like a karate fight. And that's when I started to get phone calls because it was something that no one had seen before. I made two women look as strong, if not stronger, than two men fighting.
Badass.
That's the way you get an audience engaged, is by showing equality in that sense. I don't want to show anyone fragile and weak. So it's like I tell people, hey, when you're going to perform, you're going to bump hands and you're going to go home with some bruises.
You're going to go at it.
You're not going to hold your hands by your chest. You're going to hold them out so you look strong.
Exactly. Yes. Absolutely.
101.
Rule number one. Yes.
So do you think in terms of seeing, female fighters on screen, have we shifted in the correct direction overall since that short? That was
Osu.
Yes.
Right?
The female Us, 2012.
2012, yeah.
Wow.
I absolutely think that since then, female characters have been portrayed and represented a lot better. They look a lot stronger. And I think that's also due to the fact that there's now an adequate time for training and rehearsals and prep. Again, going back to Sam Hargrave and what he's done, like Atomic Blonde, that was wonderful. Charlize Theron looked very strong, and I bought all of her fight scenes. Even when they were doubling her with Monique, again, the character looks strong. The character looks believable. That's the most important thing. I wasn't a fan of female-led action movies pre-2012, really. Not American ones. Not like the Resident Evil and all the weird fighting movies. But also, I think maybe because the kind of action that we have now, I think there's a lot of influence from the indie world, because indie people are now coordinating. Example, myself, Sam Hargrave, who's a director, second unit director. All of these transitions are happening with people that actually understand the formula for a fight sequence and how to make characters look strong. And I think that's because we've had the practice to do so. Like when I work on Lucifer, I try to make my female characters, again, look just as badass as my male characters. Because I've had the practice working with females, I know how to make that happen. Practice is super important. And I know how to make that happen. And the one thing people don't realize when they're choreographing is you have to choreograph to your performance strengths. So I think one of the fastest and easiest ways to make any performer look weak, whether it's a male character or a female character, is by giving them something ridiculous to do. And when I say something ridiculous to do, example, I asked my actress to throw a spinning hook kick, because you see that all the time in all the movies. And they don't know how to spin. They don't know how to pivot. They don't know how, where to keep their hands, usually right up against their chest, or they'll teapot with their hands. Their foot looks disgusting. And that right there, that's what takes me out of the choreography bit, because people think that flair and flash equates to awesome choreography, and it doesn't. Not at all. I'm a big firm believer in the basics. So when I do choreography bits, it's basic movements. And I try to create a variety of rhythms and beats with the basic movements to make that look good.
Yeah.
Like the most basic form of choreography that everyone does, everybody, is cross, jab, hook. Right? But to make it stand out and look different, how's your person going to react?
Right.
Something like that. And with a cross, jab, hook, well, why don't you, or jab, cross, hook, why don't you go jab, jab, hook? You start playing different rhythm and beats. You start changing the notes to give it some life, to give it variety. So when we're talking about action movies and female characters, nowadays they look super strong. They also have great doubles.
Yeah.
There's a variety of stunt women out there that are just amazing. And just to name some of those amazing women, like you have Nikki Facinello, Amy Johnston, Amy Sturtevant, Natalie Padilla, Tamiko Brownlee, you have Lauren Kim, you have Anisha, you have Cena, McKenna, you have Heidi Moneymaker, you have Renee Moneymaker, and the list just keeps going, right? Now, this list that I gave you guys, this list didn't exist back in 2012. So that first short that I did with Amy and Mickey, that list for me at the time was Amy and Mickey.
Yeah.
It was a very risky thing for me to do, because I expected my performers to perform just as hard as anyone else. And they did. And I think when that short came out, it opened up everyone's eyes. Like, hey, listen, women are not these delicate, fragile flowers. They're badass and they can go hard. And for me, going hard is the basis of standing out and having your work displayed. And what do I mean by that? Like, there are people that might punch and kick a bag really hard, but when you say the word action, they go 10 times slower and softer. They're afraid to hurt the person. And it's like, well, this is fight choreography. This is a fight scene. It has to look real and intense.
You got to go 100%.
Absolutely. If you're afraid of some bruises and bumps, I'm sorry, this is not the industry for you. You can still be a stuntman. You can do high falls. You can do fire gags. You can do cars. You can do a bunch of different things. But if you're afraid of some bruises and bumps, which you'll still probably get in everything I just mentioned, but in fight scenes, it's more likely to happen because there's that contact. You can pad up. You can make it as safe as you want. But if you want the fight scene to look good, you have to make it as real as possible with the energy and intensity. And one way you can make things energetic is by actually going hard. You know, not too hard, but hard enough. Yes. Like
really sell it. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to sell it. That's all there is to it. You have to sell it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when we're talking about performers and playing to their strengths. I found that really interesting. How do you find out what each performer's strength is? Just wanted to give a big thank you to everyone listening to this podcast episode. Our sponsor for this episode is Anchor. Anchor is the all-in-one place to record your podcast. And don't worry, it's completely free. It allows you to record straight from your phone or computer. You can also distribute your podcast through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so many more. So download the free Anchor app today or go to anchor.fm.
Well, what I'll usually do is I'll look at someone's reel. I'll go online and find out all the information I can about that person, where they live, how many kids they have. No, but I really do go online and look at people's reels and footage. Like, for example, going back to Mickey and Amy, I had seen Amy perform several times in front of camera with a buddy of mine, Sean Charney. So I had an understanding of where her martial arts skill set was. And then there was Mickey Facinello, who at the time I think just did one test fight with Emmanuel Manzanares, Manny, over in the Chicago area. But what I would do is I would look at all of her competitive videos online, her forms. So I got an understanding of where she's at in the martial arts stance just from watching her forms. And then I would go ahead and come up with the choreography, hoping that the girls would go hard. And sure enough, they did.
Yeah.
Even nowadays, pre-COVID actually, I would host training sessions. So over there during the open gym hours in the afternoon, I would go and anyone that wanted to train with me can go ahead and train. And we do anywhere from like a 45-minute to like an hour session that involves various kicks and punches, but it's all basics. And we just kind of go up and down the line with all these kooky, crazy ideas that I have and hip killers. Because at the end of the training session, everyone has a hard time walking with all these unique, basic choreographed kicks that we do. But that right there, that's also a great way for me to understand where you're at as far as skills go before I shoot with you. But also, I'll just have people go and kick. And I know people are coming in there. I know you people that are listening are going in there hoping that Vlad gives you a job where he shoots with you. But it's not that easy. I've been doing that for such a long time that I get picky with the people that I want to help. It's not how talented you are, but it's also like, where's your mindset at? Are you a decent human being? Are you going to screw me over? Are you going to use me and then leave me? You know, things like that, because that happens several times. So there are a lot of factors at play. I did this one short called Dragon Lady with Pepe and Brendan Hoare. And Pepe had been coming and kicking with me for such a long time. I'm like, she's a hard worker and she deserves a short film. And sure enough, you know, we made that happen over the course of 3 days. But there were times when we were doing take after take after take after take. And I know both her and Brendan were getting frustrated, but it's like, hey, I'm just not seeing it in camera. We have to do it. I think we did like 30 takes of a particular sequence, and it gets tiring. But this is what Sammo Hung did. This is what Jackie Chan did. You know, Drunken Master 2, the final fight, took 4 months to shoot.
That's insane. That's crazy. I didn't know that.
Because people like this are perfectionists. And that's why I think my stuff looks the way it is. I try to be as much of a perfectionist as I can be. You know, I call myself a lunatic in that sense. And it's like I tell people, hey, you're not going to film with me. You're not going to do a Vlad shoot. You're going to survive a Vlad shoot. If you survive a Vlad shoot, anything else is easy. But the thing is, with me, I'm very particular and I'm very picky. Like, I like to create choreographed sequences. So, you know, if your primary background is jiu-jitsu and you have no hands and legs, then there's really nothing I can do for you. If you got great reactions and there's an actual job opportunity where I can hire you and you make some money, wonderful. But as far as my personal projects, and people have to remember, a personal project is just that. It's a personal project. So don't tell people how to do stuff, right? It's their vision. It's their choreography. It's their everything. If you have a problem with that, and this is what I also kind of put out to the coordinators, if you have a problem with anyone messing with your work, go and do your own work from a professional standpoint. You know, like, oh, these guys screwed this up, this screwed us up. Okay, go put out the previs and show the audience what it was supposed to look like. Or it's like, hey, go outside into the woods and go shoot with your friends or go shoot with some people, you know, and let audiences know what you can really do. You know, if the studios are really going to mess with your art like that. But again, it's up to whoever's paying you to essentially give the end product because it's in their control. Just like with the indie world and me being picky with the people I choose, because at the end of the day, my name's on it. Like I've put out so much content throughout 20 years for anyone that's listening that I've set a standard for myself. And if I feel like something is really crappy or shitty, then I won't release it. And I won't release it, not because it's crappy or shitty, but because I'm spending time figuring out how to edit. So that way it is what I want it to be. And that's happened with a couple of projects. I shoot a project and I wouldn't put them online for a year because I was trying to figure out how to piece it all together. So the thought process was there, but the application wasn't. It's like applying theory, right? So once I started applying, that's when I got better and I understood what it was I was doing as far as like post-production goes.
Definitely. Yeah. You talk a lot about the industry and I guess climbing the ranks in the action film world. I'm kind of wondering though, like what kind of new skills did you have to learn as you climbed, and how did you learn to like adapt to those like new work related demands?
Well, new skills, I learned how to be a better storyteller. And that was primarily from my work on Brothers, the Indian movie. We had the director come out while we were prepping the action sequences over at 8711. And he was watching Manny and I camera operate and work, and he loved what we were doing. But then he and I had a discussion, and he said, listen, Vlad, this is a mixed martial art movie. Most of India doesn't know what mixed martial arts is. So when you put someone in an arm bar, I love your camera angle, but we need to educate the audience. So we would go ahead and go down the arm and show the pain, show all the setups in one shot of an arm bar, the person that's performing the arm bar and the person that's receiving the arm bar. So you can see the extent of the arm, you can see the pain, you can see the struggle and all that, like actual story beats. So getting into the industry professionally, I learned how to do that. And on Lucifer, with all the writing that the action caters to, there's specific, you could say, points that you have to go ahead and touch up on. If there's like a page of dialogue and in between that dialogue there's action sequences, you have to know exactly where the action fits the narrative, where the action, like if I say, I hate you, does that come right before an action beat or right after an action beat? Because even though it's there, and this is the other thing I've learned, even if it's on the script, you don't have to take it literally. You definitely want to show the writer and the producer and the director that you know what's going on because it's on paper.
Right. Yeah.
And you display that, right? Whether you have your performers say the lines, or me personally, for anyone listening out there, I love to subtitle. I don't want my performers to do dialogue because then it gets criticized. So subtitles are the best. And if you're like, oh, I don't know how much time I need to stay on this person's face, what I do, for anyone taking notes out there, I have someone else read the lines off camera. So I know how long, how much time I need. Oh yeah, I hope everyone's taking notes. So it taught me how to do that. It taught me how to space out action. It also taught me the importance of an objective in an action sequence. And I'm going to stop that right there because I'm not going to teach you guys, when I say you guys at the audience, I'm not going to teach the audience what an objective is and the importance of an objective. That's for you guys to practice and to learn. I already told everyone about the subtitle secrets. These things that you don't get to practice in the indie world, like going off of a script. And then the most beautiful part, when you start actually coordinating, it's all the paperwork and all the talking and the discussions and the emails and the conference calls and the meetings. These are all things you don't know how to do on an indie level because you're talking to your friends. And your friends don't have millions of dollars. They don't have $10,000 to pay you. They don't have $1,000 to pay you. So you guys are talking on the level that comes from pure love, right? For the most part, hopefully, 90% love. Someone's out there to screw everybody else. So these are new skills that you acquire and you learn. I think the king of talking would be someone like J.J. Perry. When you watch him in the meeting, you're just like, damn, this guy's a pro. Like realistically, he can sell ice to Eskimos from a production standpoint. I like to joke around and say that my wife can sell ice to Eskimos because she can get anything she wants in life, which is wonderful. But this guy does it on a professional level with production. So those are new skill sets that you acquire and you learn. There's also other things involved. Like when you go into the professional world, there's also money managing. And I'm going to give people advice right now. I love to talk about things that you don't get any information on when you enter the industry. When you enter the industry, for example, and you have a big job, you're thinking to yourself, yes, this is going to get rid of my credit card debt. I can pay off my car. I can help out mom and dad. I'm going to be awesome. It's like, those are all beautiful things to believe. And I believed all those things after my first job. And then what happened? I didn't work for like 6 months. And the money in the account was like less and less and less. And you start getting nervous. So for anyone out there, if you get a run, right? And I recommend still doing this if you've had regular runs, just so you manage your financial a lot better. If you get on a run, the money you make, half that money put aside, pretend it doesn't exist. Pretend like, hey, that money is going to taxes. So that way, when you see that there is money left over, you're like, good, you can take some risks. For me, risks have always been like investing in gear and in hard drives and in equipment and things like that. So if you're going to go work your butt off, you can splurge a little bit. Wonderful, absolutely. But you also have to be responsible because honestly, you don't know when the next job is coming. And now with COVID here, with us not knowing when work is happening, that's more true now than ever. You have shows that were supposed to have 50-man fights dropping down to like a one-on-one fight. And that's a lot of jobs and opportunities missed for people that were, that are looking to work. That transition, it's a very beautiful and ugly transition. It will allow you to go ahead and leave your day job if you have one. If you were lucky enough to work for like 14, 15 years, like myself, doing regular jobs before you got into the industry, I think you will do all right because you will understand and value that which you have, as opposed to some 19-year-old that gets into the industry and by the time they're like 23, 24, they're working on all the big shows, making $200,000, $300,000 a year. Those are the kind of people that can lose their level and their status really fast and fall down the hardest because they don't value and understand what it is they have. So there's a lot of responsibility that comes with joining the professional workforce. And there's a lot of accountability as well. If you screw up, if you F up, you have to own up to it. You have to, the best thing you can tell someone, for anyone listening and again, taking notes, if you screw up, you say, I'm sorry for, and then you say what you did, right? So that way the person knows, what it is that you're talking about. You can't just say, I'm sorry. What are you sorry for?
Yeah.
Absolutely too vague. Like one time I had to apologize. I said, I'm sorry for bringing someone in without checking in with you. I promise it won't happen again. Right? And it never happened again. And the coordinator was extremely happy. Not because I had screwed up and they were now in a position where they had something over me, but because I screwed up, I understood what I did. I manned up to it. I held myself accountable. And I ensured the person that wasn't going to happen. Because when you're dealing with people and you're dealing with time and you're dealing with money, all of these things come into play in the professional world. And that's so transitioning into what else I learned is time management. But again, working in the indie world, like when I say working in the indie world, any and every opportunity I had to drive up to San Diego or San Bernardino or San Francisco, I did. Because no one in LA was filming with me at the time. No one cared who I was. Nobody cared what I was doing. Now it's different. I can reach out to just about anyone in the stunt industry and they'll say, yes, I'm down, which is a beautiful thing. And it lets me know that I put in my time. But the most important thing is time management. When you're working on the TV show, for example, you need to know how much choreography you can have in a sequence. And you have to know that you're probably not going to get as much time as you will or as you're thinking. Especially with COVID nowadays, the coordinator and I, we're reminded like, hey, you're not going to have a full day. You might have like 6 hours. So what I like to do is I like to choreograph the bare necessities. So that way we can't strip the choreography anymore. It's like, hey, this is everything you have and need to tell the story.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Whereas people will go ahead and it's like, hey, we're going to have 6 hours to shoot this, maybe 4. Awesome. Here's this 3-minute fight scene that we've prepped for you. I'm sorry, what? That's completely unrealistic. If you have 4 hours to shoot a fight, 30-second fight. Keep it at 30 seconds, maximum 1 minute. And if you're going to push it to a minute, know how to drop it down to 30 seconds. And again, that all comes with practice. Some people, they want to go ahead and jump into the choreography world, and that's great. And if you want to be a choreographer, find yourself a fight coordinator that will put you on the choreography team if they have an opportunity. Just because you're a fight choreographer doesn't mean you're a fight coordinator.
Right.
Fight coordinator needs to know how to tell the story. Right? He needs to know how to set that tone and setting of the action sequence. Choreography is used to design and create moves. It doesn't necessarily dictate the story. So choreographers, they get so excited. They're like, we're going to do this and we're going to do that and we're going to do this. And it's like, that's great. But how does that relate to your character? How does that relate to the story?
Mm-hmm.
With me, what I like to do is, even for example, on Lucifer, I have a great team working with me. My Lucifer double, Morgan Benoit, my Amenadiel double, Aaron Alexander. So when we have fights, I'll tell them to go ahead and chime in with ideas because, one, I have one day to create this fight, shoot it. It's got to look as perfect as it can. It's got to look like almost the exact same product that we're going to do on the day of.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll tell these guys, hey, this is the story. This is the sequence of events that are happening. These are certain moves that I'd like. You guys are more than welcome to go ahead and create ideas. And what will happen is ideas will start getting tossed out. And if I really like something, I'll let them know, hey, hold on to this idea. We're going to place it over here in this certain section of the fight. Like, let's put it 70% into the fight because that feels like a 70% into the fight kind of a moment, you know? And because I do that, that allows me to get my workflow going. Now, I could be a complete jackass. And I could say, no one's choreographing anything. Everyone is listening to me. You're going to do exactly what I tell you. Number one, people might get butthurt, but at the same time, it's like, well, hey, that's the position I'm in, and you're in the position that you're in, right? You're here to be the performer. I'm here to be the creator. But I don't think that works very well because I want these choreographers to have a basic understanding of how to tell story, which is why I said if you think you're a choreographer, find yourself a fight coordinator. Someone that understands story.
It's like a partnership.
So that way,
yeah,
absolutely, the partnership, but you also get an understanding and the basic foundation of how to tell a story in an action sequence, right? People like Brendan, like Jimmy, like Micah, I shoot with them whenever I can, and people are like, well, why do you just shoot with them? Because they know what I like, because they work with me so long. I've invested my time into them, and they've invested the time into themselves and with me that they can pitch ideas to me. Like Brendan in O's 2 was the primary choreographer. I just told him at this point, we need this. And I'll tell him, like, I want this move to be executed over here. There are certain moves that I want that I help with the choreography. But to play to the person's strength, someone like Brendan, who I had shot with, you know, when we did O's 2, it was 2016. Brendan and I started filming in 2009. So we've had a 7-year relationship where I trust the guy to come up with ideas, and I trust him to come up with ideas that are fresh and that are good to him. And just like I do on Lucifer with my doubles, if I give people the opportunity to choreograph, I know where to put those ideas. I'm essentially a conductor or whoever, the guy that's piecing everything together. I'm the director. I'm the action director. And that's what it comes down to, because I'm the one that's narrating and telling the story.
Right. I think a lot of people, you know, they hear the two terms fight coordinator and fight choreographer, and maybe they don't realize what that difference is exactly.
Yeah, well, with fight choreography, you'll also just go ahead, you'll show up, you'll choreograph scenes, and then you go home. As soon as you start using the word coordinator, there's also a lot more paperwork involved. There's also more production time involved. Like I was talking about the meetings and the emails. You know, you contact all the departments. You send them a previs. You talk to them about what's going on because they need to know, oh, we're cutting the actor's shirt at this moment. Okay, how many shirts do we need? Oh, there's a makeup moment over here. You know, all these things come into play. So when you're a coordinator, it's a much more serious role that you take on, and you have to be a pretty decent communicator and know how to convey all the messages to all the departments that you need to. You have to know how to talk to production. It's all these certain things. A choreographer means you're coming up with the beats. You're coming up with the moves. You're not the fight coordinator. It's still different. Now, the choreographer can transition into a coordinator. But again, if you're a choreographer, if you love coming up with moves, that's great. Go out and shoot choreography. And this is, I think, something that we did and I did when I started out is I went out and I just shot choreography. I shot things that looked cool, that I thought was cool. And then I began to go ahead and start telling a story behind the choreography beats. So be good at something. It's like, hey, you kind of have to know how to crawl before you can walk, right? You have to know how to walk before you can run. Absolutely, yes. So take those steps. They all take time. But when you get into the position that you're being hired for, It's going to make things a lot easier. If you're a stunt coordinator and you're too proud and you can't hire a fight coordinator because you think you can do the job, you can't throw any punches or kicks yourself, you can't do anything yourself, it's going to show and tell when Marvel contacts you and says you have to redo the entire fight because it was shit. Do the work, put in the time to prepare yourself to be the best version of yourself you can when people actually start paying you money. Because when people pay you money, they're going to have expectations. And if you live in your own fantasy world, you're not going to meet those expectations and demands, which means you're probably not going to work with these people again.
Gotcha. Yeah, back to that responsibility or accountability part of things. I think we want to move into some specific scene breakdowns in a moment, but I would like to ask one more general, like, creative process question. I was listening to one of the Jamcast episodes. I remember you guys talking something about like possibly smoking and possibly, something that's legal in California, of course. How does that play into your overall creative process?
Oh boy, hell yeah. Okay, just number one, for anyone listening out there, I take and engage in marijuana smoking activities. And I do that because I dislocated my shoulder. And at the time of the dislocation, my mom refused me any kind of medication as far as like Percocet or anything like that. And the pain was ridiculous. So at the time we were on strike. This is when the big supermarket strike was happening in Southern California. I had some coworkers that told me, hey, if you have a smoke, it will relieve the pain. And I'm like, I don't know, this stuff, like I've smelled it before and it made me want to throw up. And I did throw up smelling it. So I was very hesitant to try it again. And I did. And like 20, 30 minutes later, I'm circling my arm. I'm like, I feel great. And they're like, hey, be careful. You don't want it to pop out. It's just supposed to ease the pain.
Yeah.
So that was my initial start to smoking. It wasn't until later on that another buddy of mine was like, hey, if you're going to smoke this to try to go to sleep because of the pain, try to get creative. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, listen to music. So I listened to music and nothing would happen. And he's like, no, listen to music. Because that's how people that smoke talk to you. They give you an instruction and then they slow it down and make it longer.
Yeah.
Like go for a walk.
Second understanding.
Go for a walk.
Yeah.
It's like that. I began to do that. And then before going to sleep, I'd have a smoke and I would watch martial arts movies, Hong Kong cinema or Korean cinema or any form of martial arts cinema around the world because I was doing my homework and studying at the time by watching all these movies. So somehow the creative process began there. I don't know the specifics. I can't tell you the formula. I can't tell you exactly what happened in my brain. But after that, I did use it. I did smoke as a means of a way to, quote unquote, enhance the choreography and the idea process. Now, it's not like I'm like, yes, the only way I can do something is by smoking. No. It's just like, hey, I happen to have a smoke and I'm turning on music that I think would be great for a fight scene. And suddenly these visuals would start appearing in my head. Or what I would do in the past is I would just listen to music in the car, and on my iPod, I would have fight scenes, and I would just play the fight scenes to different musics, which is kind of like how I came about with these Hong Kong edits that I put out online, where I edit to synthwave, right? So now I'd sit down and I just kind of like focus, like, when you're smoking, and I always tell people, if you're going to have a smoke for the first time, do it with people that are going to make it nice and safe. If anyone wants to smoke with me, I usually tell them, don't smoke with me, just sit around. So you kind of get secondhand. That way it doesn't hit you as hard. We have an idea, and you can observe me, to make sure that I'm not acting a fool as well. So that way you're not like, oh, I'm going to go all crazy. So number one is like, make sure that it's safe for yourself and for the other people around you.
Right.
And then you just kind of have to know why you're smoking. As I said earlier, I would smoke to go to sleep because a shoulder dislocation is not fun. And I'm one of those guys, if I sleep on my back, I snore. And so I'd have to sleep on either my shoulders or my stomach. So one out of the 4 positions was gone, my back. And now I can only have 2 positions, which was either my left shoulder or my stomach. And I'm a big boy and I move a lot when I sleep. So I would tell myself I'm smoking so I can go to sleep. So now I tell myself I'm smoking to try to get creative, right? Like you're putting yourself in the right mindset before you do something. It's kind of like when someone's going to propose to their partner. Okay, I'm going to propose to my partner. I got to set it all up. Or it's like I'm going for a job interview or I have a test. Prepare yourself. Mental state, yes, mental preparation. So same thing with the smoking activity. It's mental preparation. And if I have visions and if I have thoughts, great. If I don't, no problem. I got to enjoy some music and now my body's relaxed. But I'd say there's a decent amount of work that's been produced on my end, my personal work, because I had a relaxing session with some music involved, like that. Like I did a shoot called Model A. I was depressed because I had lost a job in China 3 days before I was supposed to fly out. And I canceled 3 jobs because of this one job I was supposed to get. So I was bummed out, and I was sitting and listening to music, and I was having a smoke. And this vision came on with this particular track by The Encounter, and the track name is Throat. And this vision came to me of Mickey Facinello doing a headbutt to Amy Studevant. And she's up in the air, like an anime moment. And it all began from there. And I'm like, okay, now I got to play the music louder on repeat. So I'll listen to the same track for like 2, 3, 4 hours if I'm into it. And I start building the story, or I'll start building a fight scene, anything and everything that I can to go ahead and start creating that. Men in Suits, which is a short film that I did with Mickey Facinello and Amy Johnston in 2012, coworker of mine and I, we had a session together, and he played a track. And when I got home, I reached out to him. I said, hey, what's the name of the track? And he's like, here, listen to the entire album. And as I was having a very nice smoke and listening to music, one of these tracks came on called My Eyes. And I'm all like, I have Men in Suits. Men in Suits is happening. So I reached out to the guys and I said, hey, in 3 weeks, we have to film. And I said 3 weeks because I knew it was raining really hard. And on the day of filming, there was some drizzle. But it was like the universe told me, like, hey, Vlad, yes, you're going to make this short happen. And sure enough, we did. And it all happened because of a smoke and some music.
Yeah.
You know, anyone that's all like, oh, smoking is bad, smoking is bad. Well, there are a lot of bad things out there, okay? Percocet's pretty bad. All these vitamins and drugs that you put into your body that say may cause this or may cause that. And it's like, well, what is smoking going to cause? It may cause you to get really, really hungry, really, really sleepy, really, really happy. I've yet to meet someone that's super angry and pissed off when they're high. Like that would be counterproductive. So yeah, it can be used for various things, and it's not a gateway drug of any sort. And I still smoke nowadays, to whether it's for creative purposes or to relax. When there's drastic weather changes, like we have right now in Southern California, my shoulders start paining. And anyone that's ever broken a bone or anything in their body, they know that when there's a drastic change in the weather, your bones start feeling it. Like right now, my left shoulder is paining a lot. I dislocated it for the first time like a year and 3 months ago. And it was like 60, 50 degrees outside last week. And the last couple of days, it's been in the 80s. So now it's like, hey, Vlad, just reminding you that your shoulder's all messed up. Don't forget, don't do anything crazy. So I have used it as a tool, but I don't rely on it. On my personal projects, I get away with certain things because they're my personal projects. I might have honestly, I try to have a smoke before and during my personal projects, but that never happens. Because what ends up happening is we become a workforce machine. As soon as we start, we go. It's like, hey, if you took a snack with you, cool. You have like 2 minutes to eat that snack and then get back to work. We will eat and we will relax and we will do anything that we want to do after we're done with work. Now, when you're going on the professional side, again, like changes from the indie world to the professional world, there's absolutely no smoking at any time, except when you get home and you're done with the day and you're like, I can't believe it. That was a hell of a day, or you're like, yes, that was an awesome day, whatever it is. Because you have to be able to function. You have to be able to operate and do all these certain things. You have to know how to talk to people. You have to know how to go ahead and change any kind of beats or rhythms because now you don't have enough time. And that comes with a coordinator job. Going back to the difference between a fight choreographer and a coordinator, I feel like if you're a coordinator and someone tells you, hey, you have a 1 minute fight, now it's got to be 20 seconds. As a coordinator, you can do that. As a choreographer, not necessarily, because as a choreographer, you're in love with your sequences and your movements. As a choreographer, you hold on to your sequences a lot stronger and tighter than you would as a coordinator. Because by that point, you understand all the changes and all the things that happen in the industry. It kind of comes with the title to expect the changes.
Right.
Going back to the smoking, if you're a smoker, if you paint, you smoke, wonderful. If you create music and you smoke, wonderful. I don't judge people because they smoke. I smoke. Joe Rogan smokes. Seth Rogen smokes. A lot of people smoke. So the most iconic movies have been smoking movies, Cheech and Chong, but it's all about being responsible and how you do it. I'm not like advocating for it, like, yeah, everyone needs to go out and smoke. Woo, party time. No. You got to do it responsibly, okay? Right. Because it does affect the way you operate. Do it around responsible people. Don't do it to get effed up. Whoa, like, like drinking. We're going to drink to get effed up. No. Do it so that way there can be that chemical change in your body that you're asking for without it affecting your head. Right. So you can still operate and function, but now your body feels relaxed. Again, it's all taking things into accountability. Have those doses that you need, but don't go overboard. Mm-hmm. Don't do it for the sake of doing it, because then you're kind of like an addict. Have a purpose. So it's not a bad thing. And yes, I've used smoking to help get creative or enhance certain ideas. And I've also created without any smoking at all. Mm-hmm. Look at the Lucifer scene, the mid-season finale, which is one of the best sequences on TV. Definitely opened up a lot of eyes to people as to like how things can be done, because it's very close to the previs that I shot. I got to action directed on the day, and there was absolutely no smoking involved in that. It's all very different. Sometimes ideas come, and sometimes, you need to be in the right state of mind for ideas to come. There are a lot of things that affects us as human beings, One day I was having a really bad day, and I stopped at a gasoline station, and I picked up something, and maybe it was some gum. And the guy on the counter just says, "Hey, have a great night." And I'm like, "Thank you very much." And because he said that, that opened me up. And that made me feel a lot better than I did after work.
It's the little things, yeah.
It's the little things, yes, absolutely.
If you liked that, please consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/actionfilmmaking and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. Stay up to date on the show by visiting our website, actiondecoded.com, and by following us on Instagram at Action Filmmaking Podcast. Until next time, thanks for listening.